was looking for it, and I said to my wife today, I said, where's my Special Forces jacket? And she said, why? I said, well, you know, I have a function today, and I'm going to say a few words, and I want to be dressed appropriately. And she said, well, you're too fat. I gave it to Goodwill. I said, well, thank you very much. Why didn't you ask me? You know, I would have tried to let it out or do something. So she gave my jacket away. I couldn't believe it. So then getting dressed, I thought it's very appropriate. You know, it's a Christmas season. You can put something red on. But Special Forces helped change my life. Really helped change my life. I was an officer's candidate at school, and back then the schools were different. I'm talking over 50 years ago, ladies and gentlemen. 50 years ago, when I was graduating from officer's candidate school, it was 6 months officer's candidate school was at the time. 6 months of people kicking your butt, and you had what's called a dream sheet. And on the dream sheet, I put down, they said, where would you like to go? What assignment would you like to have? I said, I think I would like to be a liaison officer to Tahiti, or a liaison officer to one of these other nice countries. I don't think that, you know, you really want to put me in combat. And they handed me the sheet back, and they said, look, you pick something out where you're going to go. So I said, all right, I'll just put Vietnam, Vietnam, Vietnam. And I turned it in. Now, I did not think everybody turned it in. They didn't know where they were going to go. They were all young junior officers. For me, you know, I had been a private E1, an E2, an E3. When I made corporal, I thought I had it made. I was getting the best paycheck and steady paycheck of my life. I wrote my mother, who served with General Douglas MacArthur in World War II. I'm corporal mom, corporal Christian. I've made it. My father, unfortunately, had a substance abuse problem from World War II, and he left my mom when I was about 7 years of age, and she raised us, and I think she did a great job. 3 Christian boys went off to Vietnam. I buried my one brother, and my other brother is disabled, veteran, and I spent 7 years in hospitals. But I think there's no country in the world that I'd rather give my life for, that I'd rather sacrifice for, and go through the burns and the pain and whatever else that happened. I got my orders from Officers Candidate School, and they said, you're going to Airborne Ranger Special Forces. And there were guys banging their heads against the wall because they wanted to go to these schools. And they got sent to finance school, signal corps school. So they must have did some type of psychological profile. I don't know how they decided people should go. Men should go to one school or men should go to another school. I ended up, and I tell you the truth, I was, you know, a little anxious there. I went on to Fort Bragg after Fort Benning. And jump school, I was in such good shape. I thought I could do anything, run backwards, forwards, around the clock, you could do all this stuff. Then I get to Special Forces training, and back then, Special Forces was only 3 months. It was 12 weeks for officers. And your MOS, I mean, the enlisted men, they were specialized in weapons, they were specialized in communication, they were specialized in all these different things. And the officers, they said, you're specialized in intelligence. I said, man, that's great. These other guys here all seem a lot older and much more knowledgeable. And they said, look, don't worry about it, you're intelligence. It's like a misnomer, right? We're intelligence. All these officers were intelligence back then. Going through the school, they had the Pineland Liberation Front. And it was the first time in my life, and I never knew people could do this, but in training, I fell asleep walking. I was on my feet. They just kept humping and humping us. You have your rucksacks on, and people saying, is your rucksack light? Are you carrying a light rucksack? And I'm saying, are you kidding me or what? You know, I want to be warm. I remember my gloves. I was like a little kid. I took the gloves the Army gives you, and they give you 2 pairs of gloves. They had the wool gloves, then they had the leather on top of it. I took them and I snapped them onto my jacket, my fatigue jacket, because I didn't want to lose my gloves. I was the first guy to lose his gloves in field exercise. all of our field exercises was fighting with the 82nd Airborne. And we kicked their butts all the time. And we had a lot of fun doing it. And sometimes they got to jump on us. I'll tell you the truth, but we got even with them. We had a lot of fun, and that was assigned after JFK Special Warfare Center to Company A, 3rd Special Forces. And when I was assigned there, that's when I did my cherry jump. I do 5 jumps down at Fort Benning. And everybody babies you. They come up and they say how your pack is here, and your reserve looks good, and everything's okay. Well, these guys know when someone is a cherry jumper coming to the unit. I'm waiting for people to check me out. And they're looking at me and say, what's wrong, sir? I said, well, is anybody going to look me over? They said, you don't know what you're doing? And I'm checking myself out, and I get on the plane. Everybody, jump, stand up, hook up, shuffle to the door. I didn't feel good till the guy slapped me in the butt. I hooked up and I started to shuffle, and when he screamed out okay, then we would shuffle out to the door. And it was wonderful. But as we were graduating, and we were at Special Forces, they were forming an organization called LRPS in Vietnam. I never heard of LRPS in my life. And I said, I'm really too smart to be out here in the jungle and go to the jungle and be shooting at people and them shooting at me, because somebody may hit me. So I think maybe I should run these LRPS. And it's a part-time thing, and you can always come back. You have your MOS, you can always come back to Special Forces. Back then you got a 3 profile. You just got a 3 in front of your MOS, and that meant you were Special Forces. Now they give out MOS profiles for Special Forces. So I had my 3 profile. I was going off to Vietnam to run the LRP Rangers, and next thing I know, I went from all these professional guys in A teams to gentlemen that were really different. I mean, they were really good, but at first I thought they were really crazy. I mean, they were pretty wild and crazy, and it was a unique operation. They dropped us behind enemy lines oftentimes. They knew where the enemy was, and our job was just to confirm. The LRP stood for Long Range Reconnaissance Patrols. So you don't shoot somebody, you're not supposed to shoot them. And we ended up being like hunter-killer teams. So they drop us out there, and they say, we think there's a battalion here. Now don't be compromised. And you tell us after you get the information, and we'll give you a pickup zone, we'll pick you up and you'll be out of there. Well, unfortunately, most of the time the men were compromised. If they're dropping into a battalion, they don't know exactly where the battalion is. The intelligence wasn't that good back then. Today, many of the officers that go to the field can't work with a compass and a map. They need a GPS. If the GPS goes out, they have a difficult time reading a map, knowing where it's going. So the map is like the last resort in going to your destination. The LRPS became the basic foundation for the now standing Rangers and became the permanent Rangers. And we argued, myself, General Westmoreland, General Alexander Haig, we were all in the Pentagon, and we're all together, and they were saying that after every war, since the Revolutionary War, and prior to the Revolutionary War, they had Ranger units. And they would activate these guys, then they would dissolve them. So why don't we take and make permanent the Rangers? And most of the guys that trained these Rangers were all Special Forces. So Special Forces, they took all the training and all the skills from World War II. They brought them all up, and in 1963 started putting them all together. And then when JFK came out, and he was so excited about our ability to win hearts and minds, and also infiltrate, find the enemy, and kill the enemy if we had to. They seemed to be fearless young men. I looked at the movie last night. We were soldiers once and young. Everybody in this room that wore the uniform of the United States Army and went into battle was a badass youngster. and they felt they could take on their duty, whatever they had to do. And they did it, and they did it with honor and dignity. Coming out of the military, I realized that Special Forces, we decided to take a nosedive after Vietnam. We wanted to be the quiet professionals. We became so quiet that the Navy SEALs realized the ability for gaining money from the Pentagon was to be promoted somewhat. And they picked up on TV stars, they picked up on whomever else. Everybody all of a sudden was a Navy SEAL. I mean, there's a handful of guys in here that are Special Forces, that are Green Berets. On a Friday night in a bar, you go into a bar and you can run into 40 or 50. There may be 5,000 people in the bar. They're not Special Forces guys. And so that angers us. We run into people that say, hey, I'm Special Forces. I went to, I was in the Q course, I did this, I did that. Things have changed in our society. But I think one of the things that we have to change is we have to educate members of Congress. It's no longer full with veterans. There's very few veterans in Congress. And we need veterans there to pass legislation. And the first legislation I worked on, because at 46 years old, I found myself, these two ladies are going to speak, I found myself in their hospital. And the doctor said, my wife said, look, you can't go on your work because you're having you're having something with your chest. I'm not a doctor, but get a doctor to test. So I had someone call and set up a test over at Deborah. I went in, I took the test, I did all these nuclear tests, everything else. They said, you have a problem. You have 3 clotted arteries, and were you in Vietnam? I said, yes. And they said, well, there's a presumptive disability if you're in Vietnam with spraying with Agent Orange and you were in the field, that you can have isometric heart disease. And you have 3 clotted arteries. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, Doc. I'm too young, I'm too pretty, I'm too rich. I'm whatever you want. I don't want your heart disease. I'm going to go get a second opinion. He said, good. Here are the pictures. The pictures don't lie. You need a triple bypass. And I went, and I was coming home. And back then, they had flip phones. I don't know if you remember it. So I had my Motorola flip phone. I was on Route 95 going back into Pennsylvania. And my wife said, what did the doctor say? And I said, the doctor said something's wrong with my heart. I didn't get to tell her anything, because after you got off 95, there were no cell towers. The phone went dead. So my wife was in the driveway waiting for me. She said, you just ran a marathon, you did this. What's going on? I said, look, Peg, don't cry, be careful. It's not serious. I think the guy's a little confused. You come with me tomorrow. So I went in and I met, and what was the doctor's name? McIntosh? McGrath. It's Dr. McGrath. He was from I guess Canada or something originally, but a really nice guy, and some of you people may have experiences with him. Anyway, this Dr. McGrath, he's sitting there talking to me, and he said, I said, I have to go to work, Doc. I do not have time to get this heart stuff here, so give me a pill. I need a pill. Give me a pill. I'm sure there's a pill for it. He said, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to go to Lithuania. From there, I'm going to Moscow. And then I'm going to Hong Kong. And I'm having my family meet me there. And I'm going to rent a sailboat. And we're going to sail along the Vietnamese country. And he said, great. He said, you're either going to die in Lithuania, you're going to die in Moscow, or you're going to die in Hong Kong. But you're not coming back to this hospital. Because all the king's horses and all the king's men are not going to be able to put your heart back together again. And truthfully, when you hear those words, no matter how old you are, you get a little nervous, you get a little scared. And I said to the wife, maybe this guy knows something that I don't know. I don't know anything about the heart, even though I think I'm healthy. So we're sitting in the hallway at Deborah, and we both want to cry. I'm thinking, this is crazy. I'm too young. And the guy's, I'll take bullets any day of the week. I'll take a knife or burns or anything, but something that I can't put my hand on, I can't figure out. And for everyone in this room that has served in Vietnam, there's a presumptive disability for you. Just walk into the VA. Just walk in, and if you do nothing else, they'll give you 10%. 10% for your heart. But we had to fight for that legislation. And guess who fought against us for the legislation? There were lobbyists there. They didn't want it to be called Agent Orange because Agent Orange was made by DuPont. And they didn't want lawsuits. And the Agent Orange legislation passed. Ronald Reagan signed the Agent Orange legislation. And all of a sudden, we moved to the next issue, and it was post-traumatic stress legislation. The people that fought us on that were trial lawyers. They came and said that they don't want you to have post-traumatic stress legislation. Now the trial lawyers use PTSD more than anybody. If you get caught in an elevator or a traffic jam, you have PTSD. They give everybody, the lawyer's going to work with you, you're going to get PTSD. But I'm telling you, you served your country. And it's the greatest country in the world. And they take care of veterans. But you have to raise your hand. You have to speak up. You have to speak out. I still exercise. I still do all that stuff. I try to encourage other people. I still get fat too, I'm sorry. I still grow out of my clothes. But you have to encourage your brothers and your sister veterans to exercise, even to walk. Walk around your house if you have to. But it's so important. And I was impressed with JFK, and he used to always make a speech about poor is a nation that has no heroes. Beggared is a nation that has and forgets. And then I added a line to that speech. He'd end his speeches, and I'm going to end mine. And from Captain Christian, I would say, wretched. Wretched is a nation that has veterans and mistreats. And we have to stand up and be proud of our service and put on whatever our colors are and knock on the doors, because the VA doesn't know unless we let them know. This hospital that you're going to hear from, these folks don't know all the different intricacies and the ins and outs unless we let them know. But if you go to DeBoer, you go someplace else, you tell them you're a veteran, and if you were sprayed with Agent Orange, you tell them you were sprayed with Agent Orange, because that, even though it killed the trees, they said, I remember Lillian Carter. She said it killed triple canopy jungle in 24 hours. And it sounds so interesting that maybe I'll have it tomorrow for breakfast, a glass of Agent Orange. And all the people booed her. She didn't understand what it was. It was a president's mother, and he shouldn't have sent her out to answer those questions. But I thank you for having me. I want to wish everyone a Merry, Merry, Merry Christmas. And I want to have a blessed, Happy New Year for every Green Beret, every supporter of the Green Beret, the spouses of the Green Beret. It's in our song. And his young wife waits. His Green Beret has met his fate. Don't let us meet our fate today because we did not want to fight the system and take on some bureaucrats. About 80% of the people that work at the VA are non-veterans. So if you run into one and they give you a hard time, ask for a veteran, raise your hand. Keep speaking out. We did for our country, and our country's proud, and I'm proud of you. God bless you. Thank you very much.